As I stated in the first lecture, when I say Standard American English, I mean the generally accepted pronunciation and accent which is used in the United States of America. Again, accepted is in air quotes here. It is just what has generally been defined and classified by pronunciation dictionaries and linguists as standard. That being said, just like in other countries, there are definitely other accents, and you could probably even say dialects, which exist in the United States. Someone who grew up in Boston is going to sound differently and speak differently than someone who grew up in Alabama. This course will focus on the pronunciation that you will find in an American pronunciation dictionary. So, Standard American English and the accent that goes along with it is the most common unaffected sound or accent when it comes to American English. When I say unaffected, I mean a sound that is, for lack of a better word, flat. The sound is not affected by any regional or dialect related aspects. I do recommend getting a pronunciation dictionary or using the internet as a resource. The pronunciation dictionary I recommend is called A Pronunciation Dictionary of American English. It is by Kenyon and Knott. Check the resources for a link to that book. However, if you don't want to spend money on a dictionary, dictionary.com has IPA pronunciations for all of its words. Now that we have all those explanations out of the way, let's dive into learning IPA. This course will be covering the IPA which is used for Standard American English. Standard American English is the English that is the generally accepted pronunciation and accent in the United States of America. The word accepted is in air quotes here. When I say accepted, I mean what has been defined and standardized by pronunciation dictionaries and linguists. In this course, you will gain an introduction and a good understanding of a good portion of the IPA symbols and tools which are used for notating IPA transcriptions, especially when it comes to American English. The symbols that we learn here, however, will work in any language. These symbols represent one sound and one sound only across all languages. So when you want to go work on other languages and accents, you will already have these symbols under your belt. You will gain an introduction into the mechanics of IPA and how everything fits together. You will gain a basis in IPA which will allow anyone who wants to go further in studying the IPA of other languages. You will also gain a basis in IPA which will allow you to look into using IPA for other accents and dialects. This is not a course about various accents and dialects. Think of accents like received pronunciation, the Queen's English, or the Mid-Atlantic accent. You can think of old movies from the 40s and 50s. We won't be covering any other accents or dialects in this course, although the tools you learn here will help you if you want to study other accents and dialects. This is not a course that will include the symbols which will be needed to use IPA for French, German, Italian, etc. But this is the course to start with if you would like to go into the IPA for those languages. You would only have to add a few other symbols, rules, and sounds to be able to use IPA for those languages. Now let's briefly talk a little bit more about what I mean by Standard American English. Let's jump right in. We are going to go over 12 different vowel sounds. Yes, there are only 6 different vowel letters, but in IPA, since there are more than 6 vowel sounds, there are more than 6 symbols. Make sure to check the resources for this video to get charts of the vowels and words that demonstrate them. The first vowel we are going to talk about is a lowercase I. This symbol, when used in IPA, makes the E sound, as in the word be. The tongue is high in the mouth for this vowel. Notice that the IPA is in brackets next to the word. The word be has a shorter spelling in IPA because there are only 2 sounds, a B, represented by the lowercase b, and the E sound, represented by the lowercase I. Don't worry about consonants for now. We will get into them in a couple of lectures. What are some other words that use the E sound? Some other examples are feet, free, tree, and receive. Check out the chart in the resources for more examples, and also see if you can come up with your own examples. The next vowel is an uppercase I. It makes the I sound, as in the word hit. Notice that the IPA is the same spelling, except that it uses an uppercase I to represent the I sound. Some other word examples of this sound are bin, busy, and shin. Now we come to a lowercase e. It makes the A sound, as in the word gate. Notice that I didn't include the IPA for this word. We will talk about it in the next lecture. Just know that the lowercase e makes the A sound, and it makes it without closing down like A, as in a diphthong. It just makes the A sound. The backwards 3 looking character makes the E sound, as in the word bed. This is the first example that we have come to that isn't in our alphabet. Don't worry, as you work with the sounds and writing the symbols, remembering the different characters will become second nature. The lowercase a combined with the e makes the A sound, as in the word cat. A quick note about the A that is being used. Notice that this A has a hood on it. There are a couple of different A's, as we are going to see with the next vowel. The A with the hood on it has a slightly brighter sound than the next A. So, let's talk about the next A. Notice that this A does not have a hood. This is the A that is used to represent a slightly darker ah, as in the word father. This is the A you will probably see the most when it comes to working with American English IPA. Some other examples would be hot and the word job. The next vowel is a lowercase u. It makes the oo sound, as in the word zoo. After that, we have a lowercase o, and it makes the long O sound, as in the word float. You can also think of the words obey and melody. Alright, now we have 4 more vowels which use symbols that are not part of the English alphabet. The backward C makes the ah sound. It is a short ah, as in the word ought. Some other examples are the word call and the word daughter. There is a fine distinction between this sound and the dark ah sound that we talked about with the normal lowercase a. Don't worry too much about it for now. Start to listen for different words that use these sounds and decide for yourself which sound is being used. So, think about the word father for the dark ah and the word ought for the backward C, or ah. The upside down V makes the sound. For example, the word strut. As we will see in a second, this is a more clear sound than the schwa that we will talk about in a second. Some other examples of words that make this sound are trouble, blood, and the word judge. The horseshoe symbol represents the sound. It is a little more open and bright than oo, and the sound is demonstrated in the word book. Some other examples are the words cushion and the word full. This is another sound that you should start listening to and see if you hear which words use the normal lowercase u and which ones use the horseshoe sound. Alright, the last vowel sound that we will talk about is the schwa. It is an upside down lowercase e. It makes the sound, like in the word about. I think of this vowel as the most neutral, most non-specific sound that you can make. It is a primal and nondescript sound. It's not as specific as the of the upside down V. It's just I know it might be hard to hear those distinctions right now, but just keep listening and practicing and they will come. Some other examples of words that use the schwa are heaven, joyous, and sofa. Don't get confused by the exact differences in the sounds. Your ear will adjust to them, and you will start to hear the differences. Let's review the vowels one more time, and then we will do a quick oral quiz. The lowercase I makes the E sound, as in the word be. The uppercase I makes the I sound, as in the word hit. The lowercase e makes the A sound, as in the word gate. The backwards 3 makes the sound, as in the word bed. The lowercase a with the hood combined with the lowercase e makes the a sound, as in the word cat. The normal lowercase a without the hood makes the dark ah sound, as in the word father. The lowercase u makes the oo sound, as in the word zoo. The lowercase o makes the o sound, as in the word float. The backwards lowercase c makes the short ah sound, as in the word ought. The upside down v makes the sound, as in the word strut. The horseshoe makes the sound, as in the word book. And the upside down lowercase e makes the sound, as in the word about. Now that we have reviewed those symbols, let's do a quick, relaxed sound quiz. I will simply show the symbol on the screen and ask for the sound that the symbol makes. After a short pause, I will demonstrate the sound and you can listen to check your work. Let's begin. What sound does the lowercase I make? It makes the E sound. So lowercase I, E. What sound does the uppercase I make? It makes the I sound. What sound does the lowercase e make? It makes the A sound. What sound does the backwards 3 make? It makes the sound. What sound does the combined A and E make? It makes the sound. What sound does the normal lowercase a make? It makes the sound. What sound does the lowercase u make? It makes the oo sound. What sound does the lowercase o make? It makes the o sound. What sound does the backwards lowercase c make? It makes the sound. What sound does the upside down lowercase v make? It makes the sound. What sound does the horseshoe make? It makes the sound. What sound does the upside down lowercase e, or schwa, make? It makes the sound. How did you do? Don't worry if it seems hard right now. By the end of this course, these symbols and sounds will become second nature. Be sure to check out the resources for this lecture for charts and other example words. You can also use the quiz for this lecture to practice the vowel symbols and the sounds that they make. Let's talk about diphthongs. A diphthong is when two vowels are sounded in one syllable. This combination of symbols and the sounds that go with them are important when using IPA. The first diphthong that we will talk about is the hooded A, with an uppercase I. This makes the I sound. So the A and the I, and both of their vowel sounds happen at the same time with the closing at the end. So I. Think of the personal pronoun I, as in I like IPA. Some examples of words that use this sound are night, by, and sky. The backward C with the uppercase I makes the oi sound, as in the word boy. Some other examples of this sound would be oil and voice. The lowercase e with the uppercase I makes the true A diphthong, as in the word rate, or gate. Notice that we used the word gate to demonstrate the A sound in the last lecture. And the reason I didn't include the IPA is because the word gate really uses a diphthong. Most A sounds in English use the diphthong. Just be aware of that. The lowercase hooded A with a lowercase u make the ow sound, as in the word cow. Some other examples are the words now, about, and doubt. The lowercase o and the horseshoe make the o sound, as in the word go. Some other examples are the words no, slow, and reproach. Now, as in the previous lecture, let's quickly review the sounds that the diphthongs make, and then we'll do a short oral quiz. The hooded A with an uppercase I makes the I sound, as in the personal pronoun I. The backward C with the uppercase I makes the oi sound, as in the word boy. The lowercase e with the uppercase I makes the A sound, as in the word rate. The hooded A with the lowercase u makes the ow sound, as in the word cow. The lowercase o with the horseshoe makes the o sound, as in the word go. Alright, now that we've reviewed, let's do a short oral quiz. This will probably be fairly easy since we are only dealing with 5 sounds. Let's begin. What sound does the hooded A with an uppercase I make? It makes the I sound. What sound does the backward C with the uppercase I make? It makes the oi sound. What sound does the lowercase e with the uppercase I make? It makes the A sound. What sound does the hooded A with the lowercase u make? It makes the ow sound. What sound does the lowercase o with the horseshoe make? It makes the O sound. Again, be sure to check the resources for charts and other word examples, and to also check out the quiz so that you can practice the symbols of diphthongs and their sounds. Next, we will discuss the sounds of consonants. There are a couple of other symbols, symbol combinations, and sounds that we need to talk about. And after that, we should have the basic tools we need to use IPA in English. The first symbol is an elongated S-looking character. It makes the sh sound, as in the word should. Some other examples would be the word shake and cash. The next symbol, which is similar to the lowercase Greek letter delta except that it has a slash through it, is a voiced v, as in the word that. Another example is the word this. The next symbol is a Greek letter. It is a lowercase theta. It represents the unvoiced th, as in the word thanks. Another example would be the word eighth. So these two characters, the voiced v, there's actually a sound behind it. That's why it's called voiced. V, that. The theta is unvoiced. There's just air, as in the word thanks. So that's the difference between those two characters. These two symbols, the voiced and the unvoiced, and th, are symbols that you should pay attention to. Check the resources for more examples of words that use these symbols, and also pay attention to how you say the th in certain words. Is it voiced or unvoiced? Are you saying it correctly? It would be interesting to look some of those words up in a pronunciation dictionary. Chances are you are saying it correctly, but it's always interesting to check. The lowercase d combined with a cursive z makes the j sound, as in the word judge. Some other examples would be the word George and the word joy. The cursive z by itself makes the zh sound, as in the word vision. The lowercase t, combined with an elongated s, makes the ch sound, as in the word church. Another example would be the word choose, or the sound that a train makes, choo-choo. The n with the tail on it is similar to the Greek letter eta. It makes the ng sound, as in the word sing. Another less obvious example is the word think. Okay, now we come to a couple of symbols that represent the specific sound of the rhotic r as they are used in English words. A schwa with a little r tail on it is what is used to represent the sound at the end of father. We call this an unstressed sound. You can also write this as a schwa with an upside down r. Both are correct. Just be aware that you may see both. Some other examples of the unstressed version of this sound are doctor, vulgar, and the word elixir. The backwards 3 with the r tail on it represents the stressed sound, as in the word earth. Some other examples of the stressed version are the word learn, the word burn, and journey. The question mark, without the dot under it, represents a glottal stop. A glottal stop is something that happens in the word button. It is when the glottis, which is in your throat, stops the air when speaking. Play with saying the word button, and you will feel the glottal stop happening. Now let's review the sounds and have an oral quiz. The elongated s makes the sh sound, as in the word should. The delta with the slash through it makes the voiced th sound, as in the word that. The theta makes the unvoiced th sound, as in the word thanks. The lowercase d and the cursive z make the j sound, as in the word judge. The cursive z by itself makes the zh sound, as in the word vision. The lowercase t with the elongated s makes the ch sound, as in the word church. The n with the tail makes the ng sound, as in the word sing. The schwa with the r tail, or the schwa and the upside down r, make the unstressed sound, as in the word father. The backwards 3 with the R tail makes the stressed sound, as in the word earth. The question mark without the dot represents a glottal stop, as in the word button. Now let's have our oral quiz. What sound does the elongated S make? It makes the sh sound. What sound does the delta with the slash through it make? It makes the voiced th sound. What sound does the theta make? It makes the unvoiced th sound. What sound does the lowercase d and the cursive z make? It makes the j sound. What sound does the cursive z by itself make? It makes the zh sound. What sound does the lowercase t with the elongated s make? It makes the ch sound. What sound does the n with the tail make? It makes the ng sound. What sound does the schwa with the r tail make? It makes the unstressed sound. What sound does the backwards 3 with the r tail make? It makes the stressed sound. What sound does the question mark without the dot represent? It represents a glottal stop. Think of the word button. Congratulations! You now know all of the basic symbols that you will need to read, write, and pronounce words in Standard American English using IPA. So now we come to our first assignment. I want you to take the text from Lord Byron's poem, She Walks in Beauty, and transcribe the first stanza into IPA. Check the resources for the text of the poem. Don't worry about getting it perfect, just go through and write down how it sounds to you in IPA. Another note, even though this poem was written by a British author, go ahead and use the Standard American English pronunciation when writing your IPA. The second assignment is to simply write your name in IPA. Try it out and see what you can come up with. In the next lecture, we will go over the transcription of the poem together, and you can compare what you wrote down to the answer. Now let's apply what we've learned. How did it go writing your name in IPA? Let's look at a couple of different names and see what they look like in IPA. My name is David, and to notate my name in IPA, I use the A diphthong, which is a lowercase e with an uppercase I, and then I have the uppercase I at the end to represent the I sound. So I have D, the diphthong for A lowercase v, the uppercase I, and then the last D. And this represents the pronunciation for my name, David. Next, let's look at the name Michael. Again, there is a diphthong, but this time we need the diphthong that makes the I sound. So we have the hooded A with the uppercase I. We also have a schwa in between the K and the L to get the K sound in the name Michael. The name Ashley is fairly straightforward. We use the hooded A combined with the lowercase e for the a sound. We have the elongated s for the sh sound. And the last part is just an L and a lowercase I. And we have Ashley. The name Elizabeth can be notated a couple different ways. The way I have it notated here has an uppercase I at the beginning, which represents the I sound, Elizabeth. In normal conversation, you might find yourself saying Elizabeth. I know that might not sound very different, but in the second one, you would use a schwa, or upside down E, to notate the first sound. If you are saying just the name Elizabeth and nothing else, chances are you will be making the I sound at the beginning, Elizabeth. However, if you are talking about Elizabeth, and you say that name in the context of a sentence, chances are you will be making the schwa sound at the beginning of the name. Hence, Elizabeth, instead of Elizabeth. Also, we have an example of an unvoiced th sound at the end of the name, Elizabeth. We wouldn't say Elizabeth and voice the th, we would say Elizabeth. The air is moving through the th, and so it is unvoiced. Now let's look at the first stanza of She Walks in Beauty by Lord Byron. How did that go? Let's go through it line by line. Did you use a pronunciation dictionary while transcribing this? You didn't necessarily need to, but sometimes it's interesting to see what the dictionary says compared to what you're hearing. Ignore the little tick marks that I have notated in my transcription. We will talk about those later in the course. So we start with the elongated S, which is the symbol for the sh sound. And notice that there are only two symbols for the word she because there are only two sounds even though there are three letters. In the word she, we have the elongated S and the lowercase I. Notice that the word walks has a backward C in the place of the A in the regular spelling because this sound is as in the word ought. Did you notate the diphthongs in the words like and night? Remember, the hooded A with the lowercase I is how we notate that diphthong, the I diphthong. One last thing on this line. How did you notate the th in the word the? Did you use an unvoiced th or a voiced th? In this case, it should be the voiced th, the. Let's take a look at the second line. Notice that I used the upside down V in place of the O for the word of. We don't say ov, we say of. And the upside down V is the symbol for that sound. We have our first R sound in this line, in the word starry. So to indicate this rhotic R sound, we use an upside down R. And again, notice that we have diphthongs in the words cloudless, climbs, and skies. In cloudless, we have the A with the horseshoe to make the ow diphthong. The third line starts out with the word and. So we don't use a normal A, or even the hooded A in this case, because to get the a sound, we have to use the hooded A combined with the lowercase e. We see the backward C again, because we have the sound in the word all. Did you use a voiced or unvoiced th for that's? Try saying it both with an unvoiced and voiced th, and see which one feels more natural. I chose to put a voiced th, that's. Make sure in the word best, you are using the backwards 3 for the sound. If you put a lowercase e, that would make the a sound, and the word would be based instead of best. Then again, in the words dark and bright, make sure that you have the upside down R to indicate the rhoticity of those sounds. In the fourth line, if you were to read that like an English speaker would normally approach word pronunciation, you might say mit at the beginning instead of meat. But remember that the lowercase I makes the E sound, so the first word is meat. We have two instances of the word her in this line. And notice that they are both using the backwards 3 with the R tail. The sound in her is a stressed sound, and so the backwards 3 with the R tail is what we use to notate that sound. In the fifth line, we have two more voiced TH sounds, thus and that. And make sure that you notated the diphthongs in mellowed and light. Mellowed uses the lowercase o with the horseshoe, and light uses the hooded A with the uppercase I. On the sixth line, let's begin by looking at the last word, denies. I have notated this with an uppercase I for the I sound. I think this is how I would pronounce it if I was reciting the poem. But there are a couple of other ways that you could notate it if you wanted to speak it or indicate to someone who is speaking it to pronounce it in a different way. You could write a lowercase d with a lowercase I and get denies, and it would sound like, which heaven to gaudy day denies. Or you could notate it as a lowercase d with a schwa, an upside down E, and get denies. So the line would sound like, which heaven to gaudy day denies. In this instance, it really depends on how you want the word to sound in the context of the poem. In my case, I like the uppercase I, which represents the I sound, which heaven to gaudy day denies. The last thing to notice in this line is that we are using the lowercase t and the elongated s in the word which to make the ch sound. Make sure you have both of those symbols or it won't symbolize the ch sound. Congratulations! You have completed your first IPA transcription. Next, we will look at some different concepts related to how certain things in American English are pronounced. The next 3 lectures will cover different concepts and sound patterns when it comes to speaking phrases and sentences. When we speak, we don't always say each individual word the way it is spelled. There are crossovers in the sounds to facilitate faster speech. The first of these concepts that we will talk about is called blending. An example of blending would be when we say the phrase, this month. Go ahead and say it out loud and see how it sounds. You might notice that you aren't saying the two words separately. The S of this is getting blended into the M of month. So if you were to isolate where the blending is happening, you would have smonth. This is what blending is. This month. Another example is this afternoon. Same idea as in this month. The S of this is blending into the A of afternoon. And isolating the sounds, you would get safternoon. See if you can think of any other examples of blending on your own. But for now, we have this month and this afternoon. The next concept is called coarticulation. There are 2 types of coarticulation. The first is called nasal aspiration. An example of this would be the phrase, good news. This is a nasal aspiration because the sound of the N is being made in the nose. Good news. It's happening in the nose, hence a nasal aspiration. The reason this is a coarticulation is because the D of good and the N of news are happening in the same sound. The D is turning into the N sound right away. You don't say good news, you say good news. The sound of the D and the sound of the N are being co-articulated in the same movement of speech. The second type of co-articulation is called lateral aspiration. An example of this would be the phrase bad luck. This kind of co-articulation happens anytime that you have a D and an L together. This is called a lateral aspiration because there is air passing on both sides of the tongue when making the D and L sound. So what happens is the tongue goes up to the hard palate to form the D, but when it releases, it is doing what it needs to make the L sound. And so the D and the L sound are happening in the same movement of speech. Bad luck. Can you think of any other examples of co-articulation? Now let's talk about linkage. Linkage happens when the sounds of a phrase are all linked together. So they are not blending and they are not happening in the same movement of speech. The phrase, why are you, is a good example of this. The Y of Y is linked to the Ah of R, and the R of R is linked to the Y of U. We don't say each of these words individually when we are speaking. We don't say why are you. We say the phrase in one breath and with all of the sounds linked together. Why are you? Next we will talk about assimilation and intrusions. This lecture will conclude our exploration into these different aspects of English speech. Let's talk about elision first. Unlike intrusions, where you add a sound, elision is where sounds are omitted at the end or the beginning of words. Again, this is so that things are quicker and easier to say. The first example is the phrase, kept going. When we say this, we lose the T in kept, so it is just kept going. If we are talking normally, we don't usually separate the words. We don't say kept going, we say kept going. This is the perfect example of elision. Another example is the phrase diamond ring. When we say it in normal everyday speech, the D is cut off of the word diamond. We don't say diamond ring unless we are trying to emphasize something. We usually just say diamond ring. Our last example is the phrase I don't know. Again, when we are saying this in normal everyday speech, we say I don't know. We lose the T at the end of don't. If we are talking in normal everyday speech and going at normal speed, we rarely say, I don't know. Again, unless we are mad or trying to emphasize something. We usually say, I don't know. A geminate happens when the first word of a phrase ends with the same sound that begins the second word. For example, the phrase social life is a geminate. When we say this phrase, we don't usually say the L at the end of social and then say the L again at the beginning of life. We just say social life. We only say one L sound, social life. Another example is the word pet turtle. When we say this, we only have one T sound. The sound of the T happens twice in the spelling, but when we actually speak it, we only make the T sound once, which makes this a geminate. Pet turtle. Our last example is the phrase, this saddle. In this case, there are two S sounds notated in the spelling, but when we speak this phrase, there is only one S sound for the two words. To make both S sounds, we would have to actually stop the breath being used in speech, and then start again on the second S sound, this saddle, instead of this saddle. And for purposes of efficient speech, it is more practical to just make one S sound. In this lecture, we will explore the last couple of markings that we will need to be able to do accurate IPA transcriptions in English. We will talk about two different stress marks. On the IPA chart, check the resources for this video to see that. These stress marks are called suprasegmentals. They are just markings that help us notate how words sound and how they are spoken. The first stress mark we will talk about is called the primary stress mark. It is a little straight line that goes beside the top of the letter in a word where the main stress is. An example of this is the word beauty. When we say this word, the stress falls on the first part or the first syllable of the word. And to notate this in IPA, we put a little straight line beside the top of the B before the word. So it's not beauty, it's beauty. Another example is the word phonetic. Now in this word, the primary stress is on the second part of the word, or the second syllable. So to notate this in IPA, we put the primary stress mark next to the top of the N in the middle of the word. So we get phonetic. It's not phonetic, it's phonetic. The second stress mark that we have is called the secondary stress mark. This mark is still a small straight line, but it is placed at the bottom of the word to indicate where the secondary stress of the word is. An example of this is the word association. So when we say this word, the first syllable is not the most important part of the word. It is secondary in how it is stressed. We don't say association. We say association. So to indicate the secondary stress, we put a little straight line at the bottom before the S after the schwa. And then we do have a primary stress in this word, and that goes before the A in association. Another example is the word constitution. This time the secondary stress is right at the beginning of the word, so the secondary stress mark goes at the bottom and before the K. The primary stress in this word is on to. We don't say constitution, we say constitution. So these little tick marks are just ways to indicate where the stress should be placed in a word. When you are transcribing or just listening to everyday speech, try and see if you can figure out where the primary stress is and where the secondary stress is. Sometimes you might have to rely on a pronunciation dictionary to know for sure. Now we are at a point where we can accurately translate English into IPA. Coming up in the course, we will have some practice transcriptions which we will go over together. In this lecture, we will talk about how to read the consonant graph on the IPA chart. I will give some exact definitions of the words in this video, and in the resources, there is a document with the definitions of all of the words on the consonant graph. So for this lecture, we will mainly talk about how to read the chart and figure out what it means. The consonant graph is a way to define what is happening physiologically when a person is making the sound of a consonant. This graph works by finding a word at the top and then going to a word on the side column and meeting on the row where the symbol is. The top row of words describes what part of the mouth or articulators are being used in the sound, and the column on the side is defining what the mouth or articulators are doing in response to the breath. For example, if we wanted to know what kind of consonant a P or a B is, we would find bilabial at the top and plosive on the side column. And in this example, the P and the B are in the first box in the first row. Labial means lips, and bi means to. So bilabial, in this context, means the closing or the near closing of both lips. And to make the P and the B sound, you do close or almost close your lips to make that sound. But there is another aspect to this sound. We have plosive. Plosive means that you are producing the consonant by stopping the airflow with your lips, in this case, and following that stopping by a sudden release of the air pressure. So the letters P and B are bilabial plosives because we close the lips, stop the air, and then release the air. And when we do that, we get p and b. Let's try another consonant sound. If we find the word velar in the top row of the chart, and the word nasal in the side column, and then follow the second row to the N with the tail, it is the last N in the row with the tail, this symbol is the ng sound. Velar means it is a sound that is pronounced with the back of the tongue near the soft palate. The soft palate is the thing that raises when you yawn. Nasal means a sound that is produced in the nose or the nasal cavity. And if you play with the sound of the ng, you will notice that the tongue does raise in the back and contacts the soft palate, and the sound of the ng happens in the nose. So we have a velar nasal sound. Let's try one more. What kind of sound is the v sound, or a lowercase v? If we look on the graph, we can find the v, and we find the v in the fifth row and second column. Notice that f is in the same box as the v. If we look at the boxes at the top and on the side of where the v and f are, you will see that these two sounds are labiodental fricatives. What does labiodental mean? So labio means lips, right? And dental is easy, it just means teeth. So labiodental means a sound that is made with the lips and with the teeth. Fricative means that the consonant is being made by the friction of breath in a narrow opening and producing a turbulent airflow. That is the dictionary definition. And if we look at those sounds, we see that it is an accurate definition. When we make the v sound, or the lowercase v, and the f sound, or lowercase f, we are using the lips and the teeth to make the friction of the breath, and the sounds that come out are happening on a turbulent airflow. For the lowercase f, we have f, and for the lowercase v, we have v. Check the resources for this video for definitions of all the terms on this consonant chart. Also notice on the chart that there are symbols which we have not talked about. These are the other symbols that are needed for all of the other sounds that happen in different languages. Also in the resources, I have included a link to a site that has a chart where you can click on each symbol and hear what they sound like. Let's go over Shakespeare's Sonnet 116. This particular assignment might have been a little more challenging. The language of Shakespeare might be a slight barrier first of all, and after that it is just pretty intense poetry. I have also found that transcribing iambic pentameter is a little harder to transcribe than something like "She walks in beauty," which is iambic tetrameter. Before we go through the transcription, I will read the first 8 lines of Sonnet 116. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Let's look at the first line. How would you speak this first line? Would you say, "Let me not to the marriage of true minds"? Or would you say, "Let me not to the marriage of true minds"? In the first one, there would be a T on the end of let, and that is totally fine if you want to say it that way. But in this context, most people who aren't conscious of how they are speaking the word let would probably use a glottal stop at the end of the word let. And on top of that, the words let and me are almost an example of linkage, but probably only in the most extreme cases. One has to be careful with things like linkage, blending, and those kind of things when it comes to reciting poetry. It could change the author's rhythm. But in this case, I think "let me not to the marriage of true minds" with the glottal stop at the end of let is the most correct way to transcribe this. In the word marriage, did you include your primary stress mark? The first syllable of that word is stressed, and so it does need a primary stress mark at the top before the M. On the second line, just like marriage in the first line, we have another primary stress symbol on the word admit, but this time it is on the second syllable of the word. So the primary stress mark goes before the M in admit. The word impediments has a primary stress mark in the same place on the second syllable. Also, in the word impediments, did you use the backwards 3 and then the 2 schwas for the e and sounds in that word? Don't get caught up in the exact spelling of these words when you're doing the transcriptions. Make sure you are using the symbols that represent the sounds that are actually coming out of your mouth when you pronounce the words. On the third line, look at the word alteration. We have an example of secondary and primary stress in this word. Also, did you use the backwards C at the beginning of this word? Even though the word begins with an A, the sound is really more of the sound that begins the word ought. And so we have alteration. It is good to pay attention to those little details. Now back to the stress marks. The secondary stress is at the beginning of the word. It is almost like there is some stress on that first syllable, but in the course of the word, the primary stress happens in the re syllable. So we have alteration. This is one of the most common secondary and primary stress patterns when it comes to English. Now let's look at the fourth line. Again, talking about details, look at the words remover and remove. How did you transcribe this? Did you have a lowercase I in the word remover so that it sounded like remover? That isn't necessarily wrong. You might choose to say it that way. Also, in the word remove, you could have used a schwa so that it was remove. If we make those changes to my transcription, the line would sound like, or bends with the remover to remove. But what we have on the screen, or bends with the remover to remove. Again, some people might choose to say it the first way, remover to remove. But I have remover to remove. These are the things to be aware of when doing transcriptions. How do you want the line to sound? And paying attention to what is more correct and efficient is also important. So the way I chose to notate this, it sounds like, or bends with the remover to remove. The fifth line starts with the letter O in the normal spelling on the right-hand side, but English speakers rarely just make the O sound. We almost invariably turn that O into a diphthong. So the most correct way to notate just the letter O is with the diphthong of the O and the horseshoe, O. The same goes for the word no. Use a diphthong. There is a good example in this line of how to notate the X sound in English. In the word fixed, you can see that we are using a K and an S for this particular word to get that X sound. And so we get the word fixed. Don't put a normal X in your transcription. The letter X in IPA has its own sound. On the sixth line, be sure to use a voiced TH sound on the word that. The voiced TH starts the sound of the line moving and gives the rest of the line its rhythm. That looks on tempest and is never shaken. If we do an unvoiced TH on the word that, first of all, it sounds weird, but we have to start the breath again on the next word. That looks on tempests and is never shaken. Whereas if we just have the air already moving and the sound moving on the word that, we have that looks on tempests and is never shaken. Look at the word on in this line. Notice that I am using a normal lowercase a, which represents the ah sound. In the line above it, look at the word an. Notice that I am using a schwa on the word an. In this context, the word an is being passed over. It is an ever fixed mark. A little slower. It is a never fixed mark. It's a schwa for the word an. And because it is just being passed over, the sound that comes out is a schwa. By contrast, back in the sixth line, even though the word on does start with an O, we are making the ah sound, and so we need to use the lowercase a to represent that sound. Now let's look at the 7th line. There are two different ways we can notate the word the in this line. In the course of speech, it would be acceptable to notate the word the as the voiced th with a lowercase I, thereby giving us the. So the line would sound like, "It is the star to every wandering bark." That is acceptable, and some people would probably read it this way subconsciously. For the sake of emphasis, however, I chose to notate the word with a schwa, so that it sounds like the. So with the schwa in the word the line sounds like, "It is the star to every wandering bark." In the case of iambic pentameter, we have to be careful that we don't notate syllables that shouldn't be there. It would be very easy in doing the transcription to add a schwa after the v in every and a schwa after the d in wandering, so that we had every and wandering. If we did that, the line would be this: "It is the start to every wandering bark." By doing that, we give the line 12 syllables when, because of the iambic pentameter, it should only have 10. So the transcription I have on the screen removes those two schwas. Now on the 8th line, we have our first unvoiced th, and it was probably fairly straightforward to recognize. But make sure it is unvoiced. It would sound a little weird to say, "whose worths unknown," but then make sure you switch back to the voiced th on the word although. "Whose worths unknown, although his height be taken." Good job! This is not an easy thing to transcribe. In the next lecture, we will be transcribing the last 9 lines of the poem Paul Revere's Ride by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Check the resources of this video for the text of that poem. As in the last lecture, I will read the last 9 lines of Paul Revere's Ride before we start on the transcription. A cry of defiance and not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo for evermore. For, born on the night wind of the past, through all our history to the last, in the hour of darkness and peril and need, the people will waken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed and the midnight message of Paul Revere. Let's jump right in and go over the last 9 lines in Paul Revere's Ride by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. In the first line, look at the word defiance. First of all, note that there is a primary stress on the second syllable, so that we get the word defiance. But the main thing to look at here is how we get the last part of the word. To make the ns sound, we use a schwa, an n, and an s. It is a little deceptive because that is not how we think of the ns sound. We think of it the way it is spelled in the word defiance. On the second line, the word door at the end of this line can be confusing. Most people might notate this word with an O and not the backward C. Play around with saying the word door and also practice it in the context of the line. A voice in the darkness, a knock at the door. How does it really sound? What sound is being made here? I think the backward C is the most correct sound for the word door. On the third line, just like in Sonnet 116, with the word alteration, we have another example of the secondary and primary stress pattern with the word evermore. But this time the stresses are switched. The primary stress is on the first syllable, and the secondary stress is on the third syllable. And notice that picking a word with this kind of stress pattern gives the line a nice ring to it. And a word that shall echo for evermore. Now on the fourth line, look at the word night wind. If you say this normally, night wind, what is this an example of? Is it blending? Or is it assimilation? At first it might be hard to tell. But it is an example of blending. The T and the W are blending just like they do in the phrase this month. So in the word night wind, we have an example of blending. Also make sure that in the word past, you use the hooded A combined with the E to make the A sound. If you use a normal lowercase a, you would get an ah sound in that word, and it would sound a little British, past. On the fifth line, the word through at the beginning of this line should definitely be an unvoiced TH. We say through, not through. It's even hard to voice the TH on that word. Also, here is an example of intrusion in between the word through and the word all. There is a W sound intruding to connect those two words. And so the phrase through all is an intrusion. And in the transcription, I've included the W to notate the intrusion. Look at how the word hour is notated. There's a primary stress mark at the beginning, but notice that I used the full diphthong of ow, and then to give a full effect of the word, I used the schwa and then the upside down R. So we get the word hour. You might be able to leave the schwa out, but for the purpose of being thorough, I left it in, and so we get hour. All those sounds are happening in that word. On the sixth line, look at the word hour. So hour in the last line denotes possession, our history, but the word hour in this line is a section of time, in the hour of darkness. Two different words, two different meanings, and two different normal spellings, but they both use the same IPA because they both sound the exact same. On the seventh line, notice that there are stress marks on the words people, waken, and listen. If you were transcribing this, it would be important to whoever was reading the transcription to have these stress marks. Those stress marks are important to the flow of the line. The people will waken and listen to hear. I exaggerated the stress a little bit, but the stress marks are important to the line and to the poem. On the eighth line, the word hoof can be described either as an H with a lowercase u, or with the horseshoe as I have it. Both ways would be acceptable, they would just sound a little bit different. With the lowercase u, it would sound like hoof, and with the horseshoe, it sounds like hoof. So we have either hurrying hoofbeats with the lowercase u, or hurrying hoofbeats with the horseshoe. Personally, I like the sound of the hurrying hoofbeats. The word hurrying, however, should use the horseshoe sound for our purposes of transcribing the word into American English. The other option that you might stumble on is using the backwards 3 in place of the horseshoe, the symbol for eh. That would be closer to a British or a mid-Atlantic accent if you did that, and you would get harrying. Let's look at the last line. In the word midnight, we have the same stress pattern as the word evermore earlier in the poem. Primary stress first, and then the secondary stress. Look at the word message. Notice that we use two different vowel sounds in the first syllable and the second syllable. In the first syllable, we have the backwards 3 to get the eh sound, and in the second syllable, we have the schwa to get the sound. Some people might notate this word with two backwards 3s and thereby get message. But how do you really say the word message? When you're not thinking about it, do you say message or do you say message? In this case, the more correct way to transcribe this word would be with the backwards 3 in the first syllable and the schwa in the second syllable. Message. Alright, we have done two fairly intense transcriptions. In the next lecture, we will look at the transcription for the poem Invictus by William Ernest Henley. Go ahead and transcribe the first stanza and the last stanza of that poem. Check the resources of this video for the text. In this lecture, we will go over a transcription of the first paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. First, the text. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. Alright, let's look at the first line. When in the course of human events. In the first combination of words, when in, we have an example of a coarticulation. The sound of the I in the word in is being coarticulated with the N in the word when in. In this first line, we also have a good example of using the lowercase j for the y sound in the word human. Moving on to the second line, look at the word necessary. It has the common stress pattern of the primary stress at the beginning and the secondary stress on the third syllable. This is the most correct way to notate the rhythm of this word, necessary. On the third line, look at the word dissolve. In this word, there are two S's in the normal spelling. But to get this sound in IPA, we use a Z. When we say dissolve, we don't say dissolve, we say dissolve. So make sure to use a Z in the transcription. On the fourth line, look at the word earth, and notice that it is using the backwards 3 with the R tail. This is the most correct symbol to use to notate this sound. It is a stressed sound. Even though this is the most correct way, the other way to notate it would be with the backwards 3 and an upside down R. But this symbol seems to make things clearer, the backwards 3 with the R tail. Look at the words nature and natures on the fifth line. Make sure you use both the T and the elongated S to get the ch sound. Also, again, at the end of natures, even though it is an S, make sure you use a Z to get the sound of the end of the word natures. Now moving to the sixth line, look at the word opinions. This word starts with an O, but we don't usually say the O at the beginning of that word. We don't say opinions, we say opinions. That being the case, also make sure that the primary stress is in the right spot on the second syllable, so it sounds like opinions. Notice again that we are using the lowercase j to notate the Y sound in the word opinions, and there is a Z at the end and not an S in the IPA transcription, because there is a Z sound at the end of the word opinions. And now looking at the last line, look at the word requires. To get the QU sound in IPA, we use the K and the W because those are the symbols that represent the sounds that we are making when we say the QU sound in English. Requires. The word separation has the secondary stress at the beginning and then the primary stress on the third syllable, in contrast to the word necessary earlier in the paragraph, which had the primary stress at the beginning and the secondary stress on the third syllable. Also notice that in line 5, we only notated separate, not separate. In this context, we just say separate, not separate. But in the last line, we say separation. It would sound weird to say separation, so we say separation. In both words, we use the backwards 3 to get the sound and the schwa to get the sound. Separation. Congratulations on completing this course. If you've made it to this point, you now have the tools and the experience to do accurate English transcriptions using IPA. You also have more awareness of how things are pronounced, and you can change how you pronounce things if you would like to. You know a major portion of the sounds on the IPA chart. You also know how to read and navigate the IPA chart and its different graphs. Now that you know how to use the chart, you know a lot of the symbols and sounds, and you have experience working with transcriptions, what happens now? Well, if you only want to use IPA for American English, then this course might be where you choose to stop. If you want to use IPA to study dialects and accents, you have the basic tools you need to pursue that line of study. To go farther in that direction, I recommend Paul Meyer's Accents and Dialects for Stage and Screen when it comes to accents and dialects. It is a book with CDs which covers 24 common accents and dialects in English. Check the resources for a link to that book. You can also use what you have learned in this course to pursue IPA in other languages. You only need to add a few more symbols to be able to use IPA in German, Spanish, Italian, French, etc. One of the best diction books I have found for using IPA in other languages is called A Handbook of Diction for Singers by David Adams. Don't worry, you don't have to be a singer to use this book. It is a great and detailed study of the IPA for Italian, German, and French. Thank you for taking this course, and I wish you luck in your use and study of IPA. Hello, and welcome to an intro to the International Phonetic Alphabet. I know you all are probably wondering, what is going on the screen here? What are these weird symbols, letters, and other markings? What you are seeing are some letters and symbols from the International Phonetic Alphabet. What you are seeing literally reads as, "Welcome to an intro to the International Phonetic Alphabet." IPA stands for the International Phonetic Alphabet. So what is IPA? Let's first look at the chart which organizes all of the symbols, letters, and markings of IPA. The chart organizes the symbols according to consonants, vowels, along with other symbols, and the different markings which are used to write IPA. You can see that the consonants are categorized in different columns and rows, such as plosive, nasal, bilabial, and labiodental. I will explain these terms later in the course. So the International Phonetic Alphabet is a collection of symbols which represent all of the sounds that a human being makes in the use of language. A lot of the symbols that are used, and especially the symbols that will be used in this course, are similar to the English alphabet. IPA is a tool that can be used to master pronunciation of a language or a dialect, or anything that is related to human speech. IPA is also found alongside words in most dictionaries and especially in pronunciation dictionaries. Now that you have a basic understanding of what IPA is, let's talk about what this course is and what it is not. So now we come to the consonants. This will probably be the easiest set of information to learn. Most of these symbols are the same as the English alphabet, and they make the same sounds as in the English alphabet. There are a couple of exceptions, so we will spend the most time on those. The lowercase b represents the same sound that it does in English. It makes the b sound. Notice that any of the letters that make this sound, like b, have a schwa or an upside down e in the IPA. The b and the schwa represent the IPA spelling for the letter B. The lowercase d represents the same sound that it does in English. It makes the d sound. F makes the f sound. G makes the g sound. H makes the h sound. And now we come to an exception. The lowercase letter j makes the y sound. It has the function of what a y has in English. So, make a note of the lowercase j. It makes the y sound. K makes the k sound. L makes the l sound. M makes the sound. N makes the sound. P makes the p sound. And again, we come to another exception, which also needs to be discussed in terms of other IPA symbols. For the American rhotic R, the symbol that is used is an upside down lowercase r. Rhotic means it is a hard R sound, as in the word hard, like at the end of father or in the word grab. For comparison, you don't hear rhotic R's in received pronunciation. They don't say father, they say father. So if you want to represent the R sound that is made in American English, use the upside down lowercase r. Really quickly, there are other R sounds and symbols in IPA. I'm going to quickly explain them just so you know what they are. A normal right side up lowercase r is the symbol for a rolled R. An R without the little tail at the top represents the sound for a flipped R. An example of a flipped R is when you say the word great in a Scottish accent, so great. The R isn't rolled, but it isn't a rhotic R either. It's just flipped. The tongue hits the hard palate once and is done. So, moving on, the S makes the S sound. T makes the aspirated T sound. It isn't T, it's just T. V makes the V sound. W makes the W sound. And Z makes the Z sound. So most of that should be familiar territory. There is just the upside down R and the J that need to be memorized and remembered. In the next lecture, we'll talk about a few other sounds and symbols, and then we will be ready to apply some of what we have learned. The topic of this lecture is Assimilation and Intrusions. Assimilation is when the sound of the end of one word is assimilated or taken over by the first sound of the next word. An example of this is in the phrase, don't you. When we say this phrase in everyday life, we don't usually separate each word and say, don't you. We say, don't you. There is actually the sound of chew in the phrase. We assimilate the two sounds that end the first word and begin the second word so that we get don't you. Another example is the phrase nice shoes. The S sound at the end of nice becomes sh, and so the end sound of the first word becomes assimilated in the first sound of the second word, and we get the phrase nice shoes. So we don't say the two words separately, nice shoes. In everyday speech, it sounds like nice shoes. Intrusion is when a separate sound literally intrudes on the sounds that end the first word and begin the second word. For example, look at the phrase, he asked. This phrase adds a Y sound in between he and asked. This is a feature of speech that makes this phrase easier to say. It is easier to say, he asked, rather than separate the words with a glottal stop and say, he asked. The second one stops the air behind the phrase and makes it a little harder to say. So we have, he asked. Another example is the phrase, do it. In this phrase, the sound of W gets placed in between the word do and the word it. So again, we don't separate the two words, do it. We say, do it. These are two common examples of intrusions in English. We have the Y sound in between the words, he asked, and the W sound in the phrase, do it. Next, we will talk about elision and Geminates. Now that we have talked about the consonant graph, let's talk about the vowel graph on the IPA chart. Making vowels depends a lot on your tongue position. This graph is a visual representation of where the vowels happen in your mouth and in regards to where the tongue is. For example, the lowercase I is on the top left of the chart and represents the E vowel. And its position on this graph means that the tongue is high in the mouth and it is also toward the front of the mouth. The close next to the I means that the tongue is as close to the roof of the mouth as possible without making the E sound restricted. In contrast, the ah sound, or the normal lowercase a, which is at the bottom right of the graph, means that the ah vowel is in the back of the mouth and with a low tongue. You can see that it's under the word back, and we'll talk about the word open in just a second, but it means that the tongue is lower in the mouth. So the top three words, front, central, and back on the graph, denote where the vowel happens in the mouth. And the words close, close mid, and open denote what the tongue is doing. Close means that the tongue is as close to the roof of the mouth as possible, and open means that the tongue is as far away from the roof of the mouth as possible. Let's look at one more sound. The backwards 3 makes the sound. It is a front open mid vowel. So that means that the sound is happening around the front of the mouth. And the tongue is not all the way at the bottom of the mouth, but it isn't past the midway point of height in the mouth. And that being the case, we get the sound. So you can picture this chart as what your tongue is doing in the mouth when making these sounds. Ah is at the bottom and in the back corner of the chart, and also notice it is on a flat line, which is denoting where it's happening in the mouth and what the tongue is doing in the mouth. But the lowercase I is on the top and front of the upward slant, and that represents what the tongue is doing and where the sound is happening in the mouth when you make the E sound. In the resources, I have included a link to an interactive chart that allows you to click on the symbols and hear the sounds that each symbol makes. In the next lecture, we will go over a transcription for Shakespeare's 116th sonnet. Go ahead and do a transcription of the first 8 lines of Sonnet 116. Check the resources for the text of that sonnet. And in the next lecture, we will go over the transcription together. Let's start with the text of the first and last stanzas of Invictus before we work on the transcription. Here is the first stanza. Out of the night that covers me, black is the pit from pole to pole. I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. And then the last stanza. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Here we go. Let's jump in and get going on this transcription of Invictus by William Ernest Henley. On the first line, look at the word out. Notice that we don't just use the letter O for the word out. We use the diphthong ow. If you do use just the letter O, it would say oat, not out. While we are talking about diphthongs, also make sure that you use the I diphthong in the word night. That diphthong has the hooded A with the uppercase I. Don't use the A diphthong, which would be the lowercase e with the uppercase I. Moving to the second line, the word pole in this line can be confusing sometimes. You probably could get away with using just an O in this word, and it would still sound pretty correct. But the more correct way to notate this word is with the diphthong, which is the O with the horseshoe, and we get pole. It is the same effect as in the word float. We have 2 ah sounds in this line with the words black and the word as. Make sure you do use the hooded A with the lowercase e and not just a normal lowercase a. If you just use a normal lowercase a, it is headed toward a British accent and would sound like block and Oz. On the third line, look at the word thank. It starts with an unvoiced th. I do know people who say that word as a voiced th, but it is not the standard as far as dictionaries are concerned. In the word thank, we also have an interesting example of the ng sound, or the ng sound. The n with the tail, or the ng sound, isn't only for words like sing. It does show up in words like thank, and it is important to notate them that way. Speaking of the ng, or the ng sound, and the different places it shows up, look at the word unconquerable in the fourth line. We have the n with the tail in the middle of this word. It makes up the part of the word that sounds like cong in unconquerable. We have to have this sound to get to the last part of the word. Without the ng sound, we just have ca-curable. To get all of the sounds in that word, and to get the sense of that word, we have to have the n with the tail in there, or the ng sound, to get unconquerable. Looking at the fifth line, when transcribing words that rhyme, especially words that are right beside each other, it is important to make sure that you use the same diphthong. Look at the words straight and gate. It is obvious when you say the words that they use the same diphthongs. Just make sure that you notate the same diphthongs when you're writing down your transcription. In the sixth line, in the word charged, we have the lowercase t and the elongated s. Remember that to make the ch sound, you have to have both of these symbols, the lowercase t and the elongated s. Speaking of sounds that need two symbols, look at the last sound in the word charged. To get the j sound, as in the word judge, you need to have both the lowercase d and the cursive z. If you have just the cursive z, it will just be zh, as in vision, not zh, as in judge. At the beginning of the seventh line and the beginning of the eighth line, we have more examples of intrusions. There is a y sound intruding in between the two words I and am. We would rarely say I am. We usually say I am. I went ahead and notated both phrases with the j, which makes the y sound. This is the most accurate transcription for how we would really speak those phrases. And if someone who wasn't a native English speaker was reading your transcription, it would help them to sound like a native English speaker. And by adding the j, which represents the y sound, the last two lines sound like, I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul. Now moving to the eighth line, in regards to diphthongs, make sure that you use the I diphthong for the word my. Make sure you don't just put a lowercase m and a lowercase I. That would represent the word me. For the word my, you need the I diphthong, which is the hooded A and the uppercase I. And looking at the word soul, don't just use a lowercase o, make sure you use the diphthong, the O with the horseshoe, soul. The sounds of vowels in English tend to use a good amount of diphthongs, and it is important to notate them. Great job with all of these transcriptions. These are not easy pieces of text to transcribe. I hope this practice has helped increase your confidence and facility in using IPA.